Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well, and in today's video I would like to explain how recruitment agencies are generating anywhere between 5 to 15 qualified client meetings per month using our structured outbound system that even works in the slower markets. And so my goal really in this video is to show you how valuable cold emails still are, and that hopefully this is something that we can genuinely help you with. So let's dive right into it. If you're running a recruitment or staffing agency right now, you probably already know how inconsistent the client acquisition process can be, and perhaps your referrals are getting you business and placements are even being filled. But as soon as the market starts to slow down, even just a little bit, you're back to wondering where the next client is going to come from. And why does this really matter now? And honestly, it's because the market today is very different from what it was a few years ago. You see, back in 2021 and even 2022, companies were just hiring a lot more aggressively, and the demand for recruitment was just a lot higher. Clients were just a lot easier to land, and actually, a lot of agencies could just rely heavily on referrals and inbound demand. But unfortunately, that's just not the environment we're operating in anymore because hiring has slowed down across a lot of different industries and companies are becoming a lot more selective. And honestly, if your pipeline right now mainly relies on referrals or inbound opportunities, you're probably feeling that unpredictability right now. And that's kind of why I wanted to make this video because despite what a lot of people think, outbound still works extremely well for recruitment agencies when it's done correctly. It's not spammy, it's not supposed to be sent to a bunch of random companies, and you're not really supposed to treat this like mass outreach. You see, the agencies that are seeing results from outbound today, they're usually seeing this as a real acquisition system. So I kind of wanted to talk about why most outbound fails in the first place. And it actually is one of the biggest misconceptions in the recruitment space right now that cold emails just no longer work. But honestly, most outbound fails before the first email is even sent. And what do I even mean by that? Well, what usually happens is an agency would just buy a leads list and they'll just send a few generic emails. And maybe they'll just test a campaign for like a week or two. Then they just conclude that the outbound just doesn't work. Or maybe you already have recruiters or BDs doing this outreach internally, but you're still not seeing consistent client conversations from it. And usually the issue itself isn't outbound. It's just the fact that there was just not a real system behind it in the first place. Because effective outbound really comes down to more than just sending emails. It really comes down to a lot of things like infrastructure, targeting, relevancy. And if you just miss one of those pieces that I've listed here, your performance is just going to drop very dramatically. And most people trying to do cold emails right now are just using outdated strategies that worked years ago. But inboxes now are a lot smarter, buyers respond differently, and if you don't adapt your strategy to the current market, you're just going to fall off very quickly. And here I wanted to talk about why cold emails still work. And if you're wondering whether cold email still works in today's market, I kind of want you to think about the largest companies in the world. You know, people like Microsoft, Amazon, and even IBM. These are just a few of the largest companies still using outbound email today to acquire new business. And these are organizations with unlimited marketing budgets. So they could literally choose any acquisition channel they wanted to. But they still choose to use outbound because they understand that when it is done correctly, it's one of the most scalable and direct ways to generate qualified business opportunities. And so the real difference isn't whether cold emails work or not. It's just a difference in execution. And that's what's going to separate between effective outbound and what's going to be spam. So before I continue, I want to quickly introduce who I am. My name is Andrew, and I am the founder of LeadMap Direct, and I specifically work with recruiting and staffing agencies on outbound client acquisition. And one of the main things I kind of noticed with these agencies is that they're actually very good at recruiting and fulfilling roles for their clients, but when it came to client acquisition, it often felt very inconsistent for them, especially during the slower markets. And so I already know that most agencies know how to fill their roles, but they had a big challenge in creating a more predictable flow of client conversations consistently over time. And that's kind of why I became heavily focused on the outbound systems and the infrastructures behind them. So in today's video, I want to explain a high level overview on how our outbound system really works. And so we'll go over this piece by piece. And the first piece is the infrastructure and the deliverability. Because even with great messaging, it won't even matter if your emails just never land in people's inboxes in the first place. And this is actually where a lot of agencies unknowingly hurt themselves because they didn't get the first things right, like the domain setup or the warm up process, or even just being able to check their email health deliverability. And why does that all really matter? It all really matters because these are things that directly affect whether your emails get seen or not. And so that's why here at LeadMap Direct, we actually do handle all the infrastructure setup. We do all the warm-up process before the campaigns even go live. And that alone is a process that takes somewhere around 14 days. And while I know that may sound slow, it's actually one of the main reasons why agencies fail with outbound in the first place. They just rush the setup, they damage the deliverability of their emails, and they just assume that the cold emails just no longer work. But the reality is, outbound today is heavily dependent on infrastructure. And that leads us to the second piece of the outbound system, which is the targeting and the messaging. Because even with solid deliverability, poor targeting and generic messaging will kill your performance. Most outreach today feels completely irrelevant. It's the same copy, the same pitch, and just the same template sent to thousands of different companies, which is why most decision makers just ignore it immediately. So instead of treating outreach like a volume game, whilst volume is very important, we heavily focus on the relevancy as well. So here at LeadMap Direct, we actually do handle all the lead sourcing, all the targeting, all the messaging angles, and we actually do take it a step further to do an ongoing optimization. So the outreach actually feels relevant to the companies being contacted to. So this brings us to our third piece of the system, which is the follow-up and the consistency part. And one of the biggest mistakes that agencies make with outbound is actually simply just stopping too early. And a lot of meetings actually do come from follow-ups and not just the first email. You know, people are just busy, they're distracted, or even just the timing is just off, which is why we actively manage structured follow-up systems throughout campaigns, and we don't just send one email and hope for the best, but we keep your agency visible and consistently top of mind over time. And so this is actually a big reason why recruiters struggle with this internally. It's actually because recruiters and BDs, they're already focused on filling roles, managing clients, doing the client communications, and even just day-to-day operations. So the outreach itself just becomes inconsistent, and inconsistent outreach usually creates inconsistent pipelines. So what does this all really mean for you? And I kind of really want to break this down in numbers because it actually becomes pretty clear why outbound becomes such a valuable acquisition channel for recruitment agencies. So let's give this example here. Let's say over time the campaigns are generating somewhere between 5 to 15 qualified client conversations per month. Now, obviously, not every conversation turns into a client, but even if you close a small percentage of those opportunities, and we could say around maybe 20 to 30%, this could still mean an additional 2 to 3 clients every single month for your agency. And for most recruitment agencies, a few additional clients every single month can completely change the trajectory of your business over the course of a year. It's just because you're not going to rely on referrals or waiting on inbound demand to show up. You now have a system that is creating you new opportunities in the background. And that's kind of the whole goal here. We don't want random spikes in business. Here, we're trying to build you a system that consistently creates qualified conversations month after month. So this brings me to this question that a lot of people ask themselves is, can't I just do this myself? And technically, yes, you can. But now you would just be managing all the different things like infrastructure, the deliverability, all the campaigns, the testing, the follow-ups, all whilst trying to run your own recruitment agency. So this is why here at LeadMap Direct, we structured this outbound system for you, specifically for recruitment agencies. So instead of trying to manage every piece internally, you now have a system designed to consistently generate qualified client conversations while your team stays focused on fulfillment and growth. So this is what we do. We help recruitment agencies build and manage an outbound system from end to end. And the goal really is to create a more predictable flow of qualified client conversations without having your team manage the entire outbound system internally. And to be transparent a little bit, this isn't going to be an overnight process. Actually, a lot of outbound success comes from doing the foundational work correctly up front. And that's exactly why the warm-up and setup alone can take around 14 days before the campaigns fully launch. But that's also why many agencies struggle with outbound in the first place. They just get impatient and they rush the process and they end up with inconsistent results. Which is also why we structured this around performance and outcomes. Because our goal is really to help you generate a consistent flow of qualified client conversations for your agency through a structured outbound system. And if we're not going to be able to do that within the agreed time frame, we will actually continue to optimize and work the campaigns at zero additional costs. Because this only really works for both of us if both of us see the real value from it long term. So if you're running a recruitment or staffing agency right now, and you're looking to build a more predictable flow of client conversations without relying entirely on referrals or inconsistent outreach, then feel free to book a call below. And what we'll do on the call is actually pretty simple. We'll just look at your current client acquisition process and we'll identify any bottlenecks that are happening currently in your business. And we will actually just see if whether we are a good fit in the first place. And if we are, then we'll walk you through what a structured outbound system could realistically look like for your agency. So there's no pressure at all. It's just a real conversation to see whether this makes sense for both of us. And if it does, we can walk you through exactly how we'd help and manage the outbound process moving forward. So if that sounds interesting, feel free to book a call below or reply back to the email you received this video from, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.